My name is Denise Redker-Brown, and I'd like to welcome you today to our webinar on the data quality in clinical trials and the rationale and the impact of good quality data. So our learning objectives today will be, I'm going to describe a quality system approach for assuring appropriate data quality. We'll be identifying data discrepancies, errors, and outliers and bias, and how to assess their importance when it comes to overall quality of the data that you're going to be collecting from your clinical trials. We'll describe how poor data quality may or may not impact study operations or analyses, and compare and contrast common approaches to discrepancy identification and resolution. Basically, data quality begins with the commitment of our organization's top management to the infrastructure and resources necessary to conduct clinical trials. So if you're in a department that, you're really striving, especially in clinical trials environment with your data then is used to provide statistical results and analyses of the information that we're collecting. So we really want to be very prudent in our collection of data, but we also have to have upper management to really be pushing our cause for data quality. It is a responsibility of all the personnel conducting the clinical trial, and it really does involve more than just compliance. The best practices in data quality for our clinical trials is that we need to have an organizational quality policy that is strongly supported by upper management, understood by all of the staff, and be supported by our operational procedures. We want to use standardized or validated data collection and handling processes, and to include as few steps as possible in the data collection and data handling processes, thereby eliminating chances for error. And that's one of the things that we really need to abide by, is that the more convoluted a process is, the more opportunity we can have to introduce bias or some kind of error into our data collection. And then this last bullet is sometimes very hard to deal with when we're speaking with let's say our medical monitors. We want to collect only data that are essential for the interpretation of trial results. I remember when I worked at another pharmaceutical company, we had a medical monitor that talked about the nice to have data. The nice to have data wasn't the data that was required to have a statistical analysis done to it, and therefore trying to convince that individual that, yeah, it might be nice to have, but until you can define exactly how you're going to use those data, maybe it's best that we don't collect these data at this time. It wouldn't be a value-added process. From a QA focus, the focus is on error prevention. In a quality control arena, our focus is on process monitoring. So we're looking at our internal processes and how we are doing those things, whereas a QA is a broader looking on how we need to keep things from happening and that kind of thing. In audits to assess data quality, we include compliance of our procedures to the regulations, compliance of practices to written documentation, the conformance of data to our source documentation, and the conformance of data to written procedures. So we usually have a standard operating procedures. We have guidance from the regulatory agencies that will determine how we are expected to collect our data. We will also have our data collection instruments, which we call the case report form. And the sites usually have source documents, so we look at the correlation between the source and the case report form. And any written procedures, such as your data management plan, if you're going to provide one of those, how well are you abiding by those procedures that you've documented? So just for a quick questionnaire for you, which of the following are assessed in a data quality audit? The compliance of procedures to regulations, the compliance of practice to written documentation, the conformance of data to source documentation, or the conformance of data to written procedures? So which are assessed in a data quality audit? For general consensus, which of those following in this particular slide would be assessed in a data quality audit?
All of them.
Yes, hooray! Don't be afraid. So from data quality and quality, we always are looking for the errors or discrepancies, any outliers or God forbid, any bias that's introduced into our study. And they're all things that factor into our data quality overall, but they are not equal. They're not the same thing. And so we look at the statements, the discrepancies, errors, outliers, and bias, and any one of these data values may be at the same time one or more of these, but not necessarily. And so they're really not the same thing, and we'll go into actual definition.